What is going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Hope you're all doing well and everybody's staying out of trouble. We're going to have a pretty good show tonight, I think. At least I feel like it's going to be good. It is Crypto Fireball Friday. I got my fire tea going here. And this show is going to be all about the Bitcoin halving. And that's what we're going to talk about. So let's start off by looking at some little bit of old information or historical information, because I do want to start at the beginning. We're going to talk about what the halving is and what are the effects of the upcoming Bitcoin halving and how it may affect the US dollar value and all the moving parts and what all the moving parts are that you must consider when deciding what you're going to do about the halving, right? Not that you have any control over it, but you know what you're going to do with your if you have Bitcoin, you know what you're going to do if you're mining Bitcoin, what you're going to do, all those different things. I'm going to start at the basics and work my way to more of my thoughts and stuff at the end. Plus, I've got a pretty intense Google sheet that I created that can kind of lay out what Bitcoin miners should be looking at. So this is a quick little trip down memory lane. How would you like? Hopefully everybody in this stream here, y'all should know what this is, right? But how would you like to have been on that mailing list? That was in 2008 from Satoshi Nakamoto. It was the original Bitcoin mailing list, the one that started the whole thing, the one where he announced that he believed that he had solved the double spend problem that was inherent in previous attempts at digital currency. So this was huge. This is actually some type of an archive. It's on SourceForge, and this is actually prior to BitcoinTalk.org. About a year later is whenever Satoshi started BitcoinTalk.org. Everything moved over there, and this is actually Satoshi's first post. Now, I will note that it's actually the 5th topic on the website. You can probably see that. I did adjust this so you guys can see the URLs now. I had it a little bit off screen, so hopefully that helps. Previously, I had it off screen. So you can see that it says topic 5 right here. If you change this to topic 1, 2, 3, 4, they don't exist. So it's kind of weird that it was the 5th topic. He was probably just testing it out. I would assume that that's what was going on with that. But this is his first post here. And in case you don't know who Satoshi is, he, she, or they were or are the creator of Bitcoin. And personally, you know, there's a lot of speculation over who it is and all that stuff. But personally, I believe it would be extremely detrimental to Bitcoin if Satoshi's identity were to be revealed. So I prefer them to remain anonymous if they are still out there. Think about it. If they have access to those 1 million plus BTC that are spread across all those wallets that are suspected to be Satoshi wallets from 2008 to 2009, 2010, that would send a huge panic to all the Bitcoin holders, right? If access to those wallets was verified. And why do you think that is? It's, you know, I mean, those suspected wallets are monitored. People have bots or, you know, some type of software monitoring those wallets all the time. And could you imagine what would happen if one Satoshi were to move out of one of those wallets? I mean, all hell would break loose, because they could then, you know, they've proven that they have access to it, and they could just dump them all on the market, and the BTC value would take a tremendously huge hit. And not only that, but, you know, like possibly identity exposure and all that stuff. It would just be an overall negative for Bitcoin, in my opinion. I don't know. Let me know in the chat what y'all think about that, and in the comments below if you're watching this afterwards. But in my opinion, it would not be good if Satoshi were to be identified. Now, one of the genius elements from Satoshi's code in Bitcoin was a disinflationary parameter. Most people say Bitcoin is deflationary, but that is not technically true, since the Bitcoin supply is actually increasing over time. So it is inflationary, but it's disinflationary. Let's see here. Disinflation is a reduction in the inflation rate, which describes Bitcoin systems to a T. The characteristic mimics other rare items, such as precious metals, by decreasing issuance, which increases scarcity. And fiat currencies like the US dollar are inflationary and are constantly being debased, meaning their value decreases over time. We're going to get into this a little bit later, but you're going to see a huge amount of inflation based on what's going on in the economy right now. The very definition of fiat currency is a currency that isn't backed by anything and has no intrinsic value. The paper has no value whatsoever, and that is the definition of fiat currency. And you can look at the cost of homes over the years. This is just one example, as an example of how inflation affects prices. And to top it off, in this specific case, wages have not kept up with inflation at all. So just living life is more expensive for younger folks now than it was for their parents. So you can see here, if you do a comparison, like adjusted for $2,000, the year $2,000, a house that in 1940 was $30,000 is now $119, or was $120 in the year 2000, right? So if you don't adjust for that, it looks even crazier, because in 1940 the same house cost $2,900, right? But that's before adjusted to the $2,000 here. So you can see, and the wages have not kept up with this. So, it's not like a one for one, which sucks, for younger folks and buying houses and all that kind of stuff. So that's enough about the whole history lesson, and let's get into the actual halving and see what we are going to talk about in a little bit. The halving is currently about 17 days away. It looks like it's supposed to happen on 12 May at 8:25 UTC, and that would be my time. 8 would be about 4 a.m. or 4. It would be 4:25, about 4:30, and I think 12 May is a. What day is that? I looked it up just the other day, and now I can't remember. 12 May is a Tuesday. Okay, so 12 May is a Tuesday, and so on Tuesday at around 4 a.m. Eastern time. So you can use this to convert yours to find out when the halving actually is on your time zone. Right? So check that out. Make sure that honestly, I think we should probably, I know this is a little off topic, but we need to set up something, even though it's going to be 4:30 in the morning my time. At least that's what it looks like right now. I'm willing to do some type of a halving party or something. We need to set this up, because it only happens once every 4 years, and this is pretty significant. And so I would like to do something to where we're streaming, or some type of little halving party. We got to do it. We got to do it. So it's just one more thing that we have to do. So what exactly does the halving refer to? And a lot of people hear the term, even in the crypto space, you can kind of see, especially on, not to point fingers or anything, but especially on the trading side of the house, like there's not much understanding when it comes to, it seems like there's a lack of understanding of halvings and how it can affect price and USD value and all that stuff. So what does it actually refer to? And in order to get there, you kind of have to understand how Bitcoins are created in the first place. The only way that new Bitcoin are created is through proof of work mining. Those folks that are running SHA-256 algorithm mining equipment, nowadays that's just ASICs, and are attached to a Bitcoin mining pool that solves the block for that specific time frame, can receive their share of rewards and all this happens in about every 10 minutes, once every 10 minutes. This is the only way Bitcoin supply is increased. It's the only way a new Bitcoin is produced. And right now it's at 12.5 per block. So 12 and a half Bitcoins are created every block, every 10 minutes. And the device that finds the random hash solution for a block's current difficulty parameters will be rewarded with that block's mining reward. If they're joined to a pool and aren't solo mining, right, then it'll be distributed amongst, how much work each miner did based on their amount of hash rate, and all that stuff gets divided out. So there's not really a way of counterfeit Bitcoins unless, now there have been two, I think there's 2 total inflation bugs in BTC in the past, not recent. Actually, there was one recent that was discovered by a Bitcoin Cash developer and pointed out before it could be exploited. So that was really good on them. But I think actually there might have been 3 inflation bugs total. But as far as creating a counterfeit Bitcoin, this is one of those misunderstandings that people don't, like the general public just don't get it. They were like, why can't you just create your own? You can't. It doesn't work like that. That's not how it works. It's cryptography. You can't just input something into the blockchain and have it work. That's not how it works, because it's a chain of blocks that have been validated and verified by the community, the mining community. So the whole network. So yeah, you can't just create fake Bitcoins. So having said all that, what exactly is a block? A Bitcoin block? I kind of explained it just now. In this context, a block is basically just a group of new transactions on the network that haven't been permanently added to the blockchain yet. This is, you can think of it as a page of an account ledger that isn't a verified record yet. It hasn't been reconciled. The block of transactions is advertised to all network participants or nodes on the network with some difficulty parameters, and miners run an algorithm on the block of information, the transactions, to see which one finds the result or meets or exceeds the current network difficulty requirement first. So it's like a race to see who can solve this very simple math problem through random number generation the fastest. Some people like to say miners solve a complex math problem, but I used to think that as well, but it's not. I don't think it's really like that. Miners are simply producing random numbers and comparing the result to a number provided by the network, and that's it. So all they're trying to do is get a number that's a hash of a number that is lower than what was provided to them by the network. And all this is based on network difficulty as well. The difficulty to find that solution is controlled by the network difficulty parameter, which basically just shows how many hashes it should take to find the answer to the problem presented by the network. And that difficulty is adjusted for Bitcoin is adjusted every 2016 blocks, which basically comes out to about once every 2 weeks. And it does this, it adjusts that difficulty in order to maintain those 10-minute block times. That's the whole point. Because if you think about what's happening, there's computing going on your hardware, whether it's ASICs or in the past, years ago, it was GPUs. So there's math computations going on, and the difficulty parameter is going to let the device know how long it should take, or actually let the network know how long it should take to generate a correct answer to the network's problem. So it's in Bitcoin, it's adjusted every 2016 blocks, which is 2 weeks, which is a long time. Most of the subsequent cryptocurrency projects that have come out have adjusted that to where it's basically every block it adjusts, right? A lot of projects are like that. This has not really been a problem for Bitcoin, but it has been a situation where weird things have happened, like the block time has been increased, to 12 minutes or 14 minutes for an extended period of time, depending on when the hash rate decreased in relationship to the last difficulty adjustment, which only happens once every 2 weeks, right? So there's all kind of gaming that can go on from, especially large miners, that can game that whole difficulty adjustment and when hash power is on the network and whenever it's not and all that stuff. So it's definitely something that large smart miners take into consideration whenever they're doing their Bitcoin mining. So let's get into the weeds a little bit on actually I mentioned the block time. Let me cover that real quick. So you can see right here, if you look at the block time, we said 10 minutes, right? But it does adjust a little bit. It's not perfectly 10 minutes. Like you can see right here, it's 9 minutes, 54 seconds currently, but I don't know, if I refresh, it might be something different. Yeah, see, I refreshed, now it's 10 minutes and 22 seconds. Now that's according to what to mine, but still you can see that it's not an exact 10 minutes. Because that's not really the way that it works. So currently the mining reward for Bitcoin is 12.5 per block. And in 2009, it started at 50 Bitcoin per block, and you could fire up a CPU, or at some point not long after 2009, you could use a GPU, and you could mine you can mine blocks on just a CPU and a GPU, or a GPU later. 50 BTC, boom. And back then, whenever that was happening, they weren't worth anything, right? Not much at all, because they weren't even being traded yet. So the value had not been discovered anywhere close to that. But could you imagine, because I wasn't, I wish I was, but I wasn't. I was not involved in it back then, but could you imagine like just firing up a GPU miner, double clicking an EXE, and then boom, 50 BTC, show up in your wallet? It's just crazy to think about that and where it's at now, So it started at 50 BTC per block. That was pre-halving, and it has had 2 halvings so far. The Bitcoin code says the rewards have half the mining rewards half every 210,000 blocks, or about every 4 years. This will continue until the rewards are at 0, which should be around the year 2140. The last halving was in July of 2016 at block 420,000, when the rewards went from 25 BTC to what they are to right now, which is 12.5 BTC. And the one before that was in November of 2012, when it went from 50 to 25. So in just a couple of weeks, the mining rewards are going to go from 12.5 to 6.25. So hopefully the math gears are spinning in y'all's heads, so y'all can see where this might lead to. So let's do a little bit of math here, real quick. This halving means that instead of 1,800 BTC being created each day, only 900 will be created. And how did we get there mathematically? Well, the Bitcoin blocks are 10 minutes each, roughly. So there's 6 each hour. You take 6 times 24 hours in a day. That's 144 blocks per day. 144 blocks times 12.5 BTC for the reward for each of those blocks is 1,800 BTC per day. So there's 1,800 BTC per day being added to the circulating supply of Bitcoin every day. And at the current value of $7,500 USD, 7,500, I think that's where we're still at. This equates to 13 point, and this is something that a lot of people don't even think about because these numbers are pretty huge, right? But at $7,500 USD, that equates to $13.5 million USD in BTC rewards per day. Every day, 13.5 million USD value is added to Bitcoin, or the 12.5. Well, 1,800 are added per day with a USD value of current value of 13.5 million. So you can see how it is worth it to set up a mining farm, to you know, I mean, if you can get investors and get the funds for it, I mean, it could be worth it, right? 13.5 million a day. But it'll be going down to 6.75 million USD each day if the value stays the same after the halving. And keep in mind that by this time, this halving, 89% of all the Bitcoin has already been mined. The circulating supply is over 18 million already, and the max supply is 21 million. So if you were a Bitcoin miner, what would you be doing? That is literally the multi-million, possibly billion-dollar question, is what you should do as a Bitcoin miner. I mean, would you sell all your BTC to buy new equipment? You know, does that make sense? Would that make sense to buy new hardware? What if you're a small miner that doesn't have BTC in reserves to be able to do that? You know, what happens to you? You know, this is, you know, and the large miners can actually pick on you too. You know, pick on the smaller mining farms because a lot of times the small miner farms have to actually leverage their position. They'll put BTC on exchanges, their mined BTC on exchanges, and actually trade it, you know, longing and shorting and using leverage to, because they're a small operation and they don't have the capability of just, you know, mining a lot. They have a smaller portion of the hash rate, so of the total network, so they don't have as many rewards coming in because they're smaller miners. So a lot of times they will trade that BTC on exchanges. And if you're a large miner and you know that, and you know which exchanges that are being used by that particular small miner, then you can use your leverage, your Bitcoin, to your stash of Bitcoin, to adjust the market and play with the market and actually liquidate that small miner, right? So there's all these little games going on, and it's crazy to even think about, but that is definitely something that you have to consider whenever you're talking about Bitcoin mining and the halving and all this stuff going on. It's kind of crazy. In my opinion, I think that to stay competitive, you're going to have to buy new equipment. I think that most YouTubers that cover this type of thing, Red Panda, Brandon Coin, you know, they've already covered like the new Antminer at least a little bit, but I think that you have to buy new hardware to stay competitive. Which, if you're a good business person, it should have already been in your business plan to include tech refreshes anyway, because hardware efficiency increases dramatically over time. It's something that you can plan for in the very beginning, and you should plan for it. So let's head over here to ASIC miner value real quick. We're going to get into a little bit of hardware, just a little bit, because, you know, I asked earlier, like, what should you be doing as a Bitcoin miner, or how is all this going to affect you? So we're going to do a little bit of math. Again, I've got that Google sheet that's pretty intense that we'll look at in a few minutes. So you can see here the top, you know, ASIC miner here for Bitcoin is, let me expand this a little bit, is the S19 Pro, which it does 110 terahash. Again, we're going to get into this more in a minute, but that one currently is $12.19 a day. It's not available yet. I don't think that I don't think it ships yet until May, so it's not even now. Here's the thing. All right, so if you were to look at, let's get off topic just a little bit here, because I want to look at the Bitcoin hash rate. I think I know what it is, but we need to see an actual chart here. So let's see here. So you can see that there's this nice little spike here at the end. You know, there's all kinds of speculation of what that actually means. I would, if it was just me looking, you know, from the outside in here, it went from what is this, 102 to 116 exahash. So I would say that there's probably new hardware on the network right here. You know, there's a lot of fluctuation here, but I'm not an analyst or anything like that, but I would just assume that that's what that means. I would imagine, you know, given the history of Bitmain and other ASIC manufacturers, these are probably online right now. I know there's a way of telling by the nonces and things like that on the network, but I don't know how to analyze that stuff, so I can't be 100% sure how many are on the network or anything like that. I know how many equivalent are on the network, but I don't know how many specific S19 Pros, and it makes a difference because of the value, the power draw, and all that stuff. You know, compared to other miners. So, but it looks like right now is $12.19 a day per S19 Pro, and these run like 32. How much are they? $2,600, I think, right now, something like that. And the S19, the 95 terahash version, is actually sold out. You can't get it anymore, at least not right now. And that one was only $10 a day. But we're going to look at the numbers a little bit more in depth in a little bit. One of the most important aspects, I kind of brought it up here with the power here, is the cost of your electricity. And small miners like home miners, hobby miners, sometimes overlook this because we're mining at home, and we might notice a little bit of a bump in our monthly electric cost depending on how many GPUs we're mining with, or what equipment, even ASICs or whatever. But it's not something that we think about a whole lot. I do, because I know how important it is, but some people can overlook it. If you've got one rig, you know, 1.6 GPU rig, you're probably not going to notice a big difference, depending on where the rig is at and what you're mining too. It does make a difference, but so don't overlook your electric cost. And if you look at this chart here, the average electricity prices around the world in kilowatt hours. You know, China, I was surprised to see this. Whenever I was looking this up, I was really thinking that China would be less than 8 cents. I'm sure that this is an average. So I would imagine that in some areas of China, it's probably less than 8 cents. And I'll show you why in a little bit once we get to the Google Sheet. So it looks like US the average is 12. I'm a little bit under 12 here. I'm at 11 after taxes and fees. So that's actually a good thing. I was happy to see that. But still, this area right here is like teetering, always teetering on the edge of profitability right here with most cryptocurrency projects. If you can get below 9 cents or 8 cents, you're almost going to be profitable no matter what. You know, but again, I still think that China is there's probably areas in China where it's probably 4 or 5 cents. And then, you know, they can probably work with I don't know how it works over there. It's communist, right? So I don't know if maybe they can work with the country, right, the government, and actually barter for a better, you know, kilowatt per hour cost, electric cost. I could see that happening, right? So I would imagine that that's possible as well. So a pretty cool little calculator that I ran across is alloscomp.com Bitcoin calculator. It's kind of cool because it shows, I mean, there's hundreds of Bitcoin calculators out there, but I just plugged in the 110 terahash for the new S19 Pro at the current block, you know, BTC per block, which is 12.5, and you know, you do calculate here and it lays it out pretty well, but it also says, it shows you what it should be on the next difficulty estimated, right? So I thought that this was pretty cool, simple little calculator. I thought it was neat, so I figured I would share that. Now, another really, we might, and the reason I bring this up is we might come back to this to verify my math on the Google Sheet a little bit, make sure that I'm not way off base. But another of the most important aspects of Bitcoin is that we know exactly how many Bitcoin are actually produced and when over time, right? So we know the inflation rate or disinflation rate over time. And you can see that in this chart, great chart here that shows the, each block halving. You can see that the orange line down there, you can see how it changes at 210, which was the first halving, then 420, and then we're at the 630. So if you look at that bottom line and you see the 630, because the next halving is at block 630,000. And you can see how the supply of the coins, the blue line, the base, is, how this works. Like there's going to be less, it's disinflationary. This is a perfect chart that shows the disinflation. So really good chart. I like this. It's easy to look at and figure out what it means. You can see the dips whenever the inflation, or whenever the reward halvings occur. You can see those every 210,000 blocks right there. So one of the things that you kind of have to think about, there's all, I say this a lot on the channel, people like to point to one thing, one specific thing that's going to cause X result, right? And it's never like that, not in anything complicated, right? It's not going to be one thing that causes Bitcoin value to increase. It's not going to be one thing that causes it to decrease, right? It's a bunch of different things. So there's all these moving parts, and it's all these things that you have to consider whenever you're trying to figure out what is going to happen in this halving, right? Because this halving is different than the previous ones. It's a different world out there right now. But you can see right here, this is just one thing. The Bitcoin block halving is only 18 days away. So the halving is happening during this May CME Bitcoin futures contract. Is it expected that the Bitcoin, and I think this was today actually, that it ended. I think I saw an article about that. Since the halving will, this is why I highlighted this is I think that they got this wrong right here. Because it says, it is expected that Bitcoin will rally since the halving will drastically reduce selling pressure. Now, are they saying because miners are going to have less to sell on the market? But most miners actually store it for some time, especially larger miners. So maybe that's what they mean by this, but it almost sounds the opposite of what you would think would happen. Because I think that miners leading up to the halving are going to be selling more Bitcoin on the market because of the value of it now, and then there's going to be it's a weird dynamic. I mean, it really is a weird dynamic, and you got to think about all these different moving parts, like I mentioned earlier. Also, a speculative rally is expected to begin even before the halving starts, which we haven't seen that yet. It hasn't been anything crazy yet. So here are my thoughts on what is going on, or what we should consider. Normally, the run-up to the halving means increased BTC value. People feel like it's a good time to buy and invest since the future added Bitcoin supply is decreasing. Goes back to the whole basic supply and demand economics. For the value of BTC to rise, though, this is important. For the value of BTC to rise, the demand for it will have to at least stay the same, stay steady after the halving. So the demand has to stay the same. If the demand decreases, things could get really ugly really quick. It's a much different landscape than previous halvings, so there's really just not a direct comparison. And if you try to compare this halving to previous ones, I think you're going to be selling yourself short, because there's a lot going on. This time you have economic collapse, stimulus and bailout plans like never before, a global pandemic, oil crisis, and off the charts levels of unemployment with, what is it, 20, I think it's 25 million Americans are out of work right now. And there's trillions of dollars being added to the supply of fiat currency. We'll see an incredible rate of inflation. All these things you got to take into consideration with the halving and what's going to happen. You know, we'll see an incredible rate of inflation this year. If everyone could understand, like by everyone I mean the general public, if they could understand why that is bad, the whole inflation thing, and how Bitcoin is actually a disinflationary asset, it would seem that information and knowledge would be good for the value of BTC. You know, it's like right now you should be telling all your friends and all your family, like, hey, you know, now's the time to look at Bitcoin if you haven't already, right? I feel really strongly about that, because if they could just sit down for a moment and think about what's happening in the economy, with the government printing, you know, or the Fed printing all this money, and how that affects, you know, the value and of everything that you purchase, all their purchasing power, and how all that works. If they understood that, I really think that they would, like, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general is just a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. But while Bitcoin was born out of the economic collapse in 2008, the crisis in 2008, it has never, and this is another important aspect of Bitcoin, it has never experienced an economic downturn or any type of recession or depression in its own life, because it started at the end of the previous one, right? More than 10 years ago. So that's another thing that you have to consider. Like, okay, how is Bitcoin going to react to a recession, possible depression? You know, so that's going to be really quite interesting to watch. It's really exciting for me anyway. Maybe since there are like a lot of people staying at home these days, because of, you know, working at home and isolation and social distancing and all that stuff, physical distancing, maybe they are actually doing what I should have done back in 2010 and Googled what is Bitcoin, right? Because I don't know if everybody in here knows the story of how, you know, I came across it. A friend of mine that I served in the Navy with, he recommended it, or he was talking to me about mining and stuff. So I started kind of doing a little bit of research. But it literally, once I got on Bitcoin and what it was and why it was created and all that stuff, it was 5 minutes, and I was like, wow, what did I miss? You know, yeah, it's just like once you, I think there's two things to it. First, you have to get really pissed off at what has happened in the past, right, with the economy and with printing money and all that stuff, and the decoupling from gold, or debacking, I don't know, from gold, you know, getting away from the gold standard. You have to really get pissed off about what has happened in the past, and I was devastated in 2008, absolutely devastated, very pissed off about that. And so it didn't take long of reading about what Bitcoin was before I was hooked. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. You know, this makes so much sense now. And so maybe during this little economic crisis here that we're having, maybe people will actually get out there and do some searching, and maybe search for what is Bitcoin, or maybe, better yet, maybe they will search for Bitcoin halving if they have seen it on the news and figured out what it means. Now, obviously, they need to know what Bitcoin is first, but if you go over here to Google Trends and you look at the search for Bitcoin halving, we are at, actually twice, we've touched the all-time high, right, of searches for Bitcoin halving. This is incredibly significant to me. I think that is a huge indicator as to what is hopefully going to happen here. If you compare it to something like what is Bitcoin, and I'll do this separate too, you can see that there's really not much of a comparison. So let me get rid of this one. We'll just do what is Bitcoin. This one's not as impressive. So look, so my point is that if you compare this to what is the Bitcoin halving or Bitcoin halving, it completely blows this chart away. And this is what is Bitcoin, right? So I mean, what does that mean? I don't know, but I think that that's a good thing. At least a lot of people are searching for what is Bitcoin halving, right? Because if they mention it on the news, if they mention it on CNBC, like, hey, the Bitcoin halving is coming up, you know, some people misinterpret it and they think that it means that the value is going to halve, and maybe it will, but that's not what it means, right? So, you know, no one knows what's going to happen here. But yeah, so if they are doing a little bit of research about it and trying to understand what it is, I think that that's a really significant event. I think that that's huge. So, all right. Woo! I've been talking a lot. So some other things that we have to consider here, the pandemic itself is probably going to have, it's probably affected ASIC manufacturers' supply chains to some degree. And that's going to probably affect ASIC mining farms in a negative way, but probably not the ones that are local to China, right? So it's probably going to delay things outside of China for those farms, right? So actually, I'm showing you the wrong thing here. I'm supposed to be showing you this. And you saw that the S19 is already sold out. That's what this is talking about here. And that was quite a while ago, actually, that it was already sold out. The S19 Pro is available though. Still, you kind of saw that a little while ago whenever I was on Bitmain's website. So I wonder how that is going to affect the halving and the network as a whole. And I think I asked this earlier, but does anyone know how to find out how many S19s were actually sold, right? I did a little bit of preliminary research, and I couldn't find out, you know, the number, and it's probably not public knowledge. You probably have to have some type of insider knowledge to really know that. But I figured I would ask anyway. You can pretty easily find out how many equivalent S19 ASICs are on the network, but I don't know the exact number. But we are going to look at the equivalent in a few minutes. Another thing to remember or think about with how the halving is going to go is the oil crisis seem to affect everything except Bitcoin value. And if that's not a good sign, I don't know what is. I mean, you know, you see the market for oil do what it was doing, and Bitcoin was just chugging right along with no problem, right? That's a good thing. Something that a lot of people don't talk about is the plus token scam. And this is a fact that I don't see being discussed regarding the impact on Bitcoin halving that much, but this could also play into it. It's basically the plus token scam. If you're not familiar, it was a massive Ponzi scheme in China. They accumulated $2 billion in BTC, $2 billion worth, US dollars worth of BTC, and they are still dumping that Bitcoin on the markets, according to analysts. So that provides a constant downward pressure on the value, right? And you know, this is funny, not funny, but it looks like they left messages in some of the transactions that said, "Sorry, we have run." So this was BitConnect times 1.5, because I think BitConnect was 2 billion, I think. I don't remember. I don't remember how much BitConnect was. I know it was a lot. Oh, wait a minute. It's out down here. 2.6 billion. So it was, the plus token scam was bigger than BitConnect. So that gives you some perspective there and lets you know how big that actually was. And it wasn't something that a lot of people knew about because it only was in China and Korea, right? These other ones were global. So that's, well, these two, BitClub and OneCoin was India, but BitClub was global and BitConnect was global. So we knew about these pretty well, but not a lot of people knew about Plus Token. And with $3 billion worth of Bitcoin being dumped on the market constantly, there's no wonder that it's been volatile and it's been not that great for the past, that happened in mid 2019. I think it was June, July. I think it talks about that in here. So I believe it was June. Yeah, they closed down the operation in June of 2019. So by July they were dumping, and probably in June also. And you saw, actually up until then, you saw a good run. I think it was up until then you saw the good run of Bitcoin up to 14,000, over 14,000 last summer. And then this dump started, and that's why we've been constantly suppressed ever since, or one of the reasons. So, yeah, cool stuff. What I'm doing is I'm just throwing out all the stuff because, like I said at the top, it's not just going to be one thing. It's going to be all these different things. So, don't fall into that human tendency to blame it on one specific thing. But there is some silver lining here. There's actually 2 billion Tether market cap soared 2 billion. There's an extra 2 billion worth of Tether sitting on exchanges waiting to be deployed. So that may offset some of that downward pressure that I was just talking about. That's kind of a good thing. Whether you like Tether or not, more of it means that more is available for trading, right? So stable coins, it's a stable coin. They play an important role in the cryptocurrency world because traders can get exposure to the price of fiat currencies and precious metals without leaving the cryptocurrency world, which allows for fast, cheap, and censorless payments. Most importantly, users can actually own their assets, which are not prone to the risks of leaving funds with a third-party exchange. So that is the benefit of stable coins and Tether in general, and whenever they print more Tether and the market cap goes up like that, that's a good thing. It can be seen as a good thing. So for a little bit of perspective before we get on to the Google sheet here, from the pre-halving back in 2009 to the first halving, that whole era, we saw Bitcoin go from $31, crazy to think about that, but we saw it go from $31 to almost $1,200, and that was a 37-time increase. From the second to the third halving era, BTC went from 1,200 to almost 20,000, which was a 16 times increase. So if the first one was 31, the second one was 16, I mean, people like to see those trends, right? So let's just say it was, so it went 37 time increase. The second halving was 16 times increase. So let's just call it 8, right? So if you were to say 8 times the current value, that's what, 60-something thousand, right? But I think that's right. If I'm doing the math right. So is it possible? Anything's possible. I don't know, but it would make sense based on previous history. But again, you cannot just say, hey, this is going to happen because it happened previously. That's not the way it works. But it is kind of cool to think about that. If you look at how many times it went up in previous halvings, kind of makes sense to at least speculate a little bit on that value and what it's going to be. And something else that you have to remember is that in our current era of Bitcoin, by next month, a little over 89% of all Bitcoin will have been issued. 89%. Now, it's going to take a really long time for the remaining 11%, 21%, wait a minute, 11% to be mined, right? Because the last one won't be until like 2140 or something like that. All right, so let's do a little bit of math. Let's head over here to the Google Sheet, and just so we can kind of get an idea. And I know I haven't even looked at chat because if I did, I would have gotten distracted and I would have never got to this part, and I didn't want to miss it. So let me see what y'all are talking about real quick. I'm just going to look real quick and I'm not going to get distracted. All right, I'll have to look back through this chat. It looks like y'all are just talking about normal stuff. So, but hopefully this has been somewhat entertaining and somewhat, you know, good information for you guys. So, I know a little bit of it was history, but I like that kind of stuff because, you know, it's neat to look at where it all started and where we came from, right? All right, so let's look at some data. I know you guys like these sheets and stuff. So let me show you what this is all about. So I've got Bitcoin details up here. So this lays out the values for the current value in USD, the current net hash rate, which is going to be important for the calculations down here. And then also the block time, which I showed you earlier that it does kind of change. It's not exactly 10 minutes. So we can also play around with that number and it changes everything else on here. And then the total BTC rewards per block, which is important because this is going to go from 12.5 to 6.25, right? And this won't take much longer, guys. We'll get over there to DCA Adventures. I don't know if they're live yet. I think they go live at 10:30, but we'll just get through this and you know, just show you how it works. The way I laid it out is I have a hardware details, so you could plug in whatever information here for whatever hardware you wanted. I've got the S19 Pro selected, or the specifications for the S19 Pro, the value, you know, how much it costs, and then all these calculations down here for how this is going to work, right? And the quantity. So like if you had a large mining farm, you know, like let's say you had 5,000, then that's going to change all the values on the whole sheet to show you, you know, what's going to happen based on all the other parameters, right? So the time and profit details are basically broken down like this. You've got minute column here. Per block is 10 minutes. I put this in here so that you could see what you would make per block, right? And then hour, and then day, and then month, and then year. So that's how it's kind of broken down. And then we'll just kind of go through a scenario here real quick. Also, you've got the electricity details, how much your cost is per kilowatt hour, and then how much, this is just a real quick little visual to show you how much it is per hour, how much USD value it is per hour. All right, so let's go through this real quick. Let's go and find out what the current, I could actually do like an API entry in here, but I don't want to. I could do it for the net hash rate, but I didn't want to do it for the value because I want to be able to adjust it so that you can see the effects of the value of Bitcoin, right? And how it affects all the other stuff. So let's go to do a refresh here on CoinGecko, boycotting CoinMarketCap since they were bought by what's that exchange? Binance. So no longer use CoinMarketCap. All right, so Bitcoin looks like it is 74.9113. Let's throw that in there. And you know I already forgot the number, right? You guys know me too well. 749113. 7491.13. All right. And then as I'm changing these, you're going to see all these values change, right? So the current BTC network hash rate, and that's important to figure out how much percentage of the hash rate you own so that you can kind of guesstimate your rewards, right? Now I know that there's difficulty parameter in there too, but it is a roundabout number, which is constantly changing. So it's kind of pointless to get it, you know, exact. So I don't have it exact, but let's go over here and go network. Let's see. I thought I already had this up, but let's see here. Go here. So 109. Okay, so 109.963 terahash. Does that sound right? 109. So it's actually gone down. 109.963 Did I do that right? I think that's right. Let's see here. Yeah, 109,963. All right, I think that's right. All right, and the block time, we can get that. We can get a more accurate one right away. But again, you probably just leave it at 10 minutes, but you can get the block time from over here at What to Mine. So it looks like 10 minutes and 27 seconds, which is almost 10.5, right? So you can see how that can actually affect your numbers a little bit. So we're gonna go 10.5 here. And then the total block rewards are 12.5, which they still are. The ASIC that we're dealing with is S19 Pro. It gets 110. Let's go back to over here. So it's 110 terahash. You can see that right here, 110 terahash. The power draw is 3250. So if we go to overview right here, should be able to see, does it have the power draw up here? Nope. So 3250 right here. That's a lot of power, man. Golly. And it's got to be on 220 too. You can't even do 120, 115. So 3250 watts. And we're going to say, we're just going to put one in here for now. So we're going to buy one S19 Pro. It costs $2,633 USD. Let me put that on here. USD value there. And so the hardware cost is that. The hash rate in petahashes is 0.11. And all this is calculated. You can see the formulas up here. So you know, you can see as if I was to change this, let's go 55, you'll see all those numbers down there at the bottom change, right? So it's 110. So the equivalent ASICs that are on the network right now would be almost 1 million. There's almost 1 million equivalent S19 Pros on the network. I think I'm doing the math right on that. So we're talking equivalent. I'm not saying that there's 1 million S19 Pros. There's S17s and all that stuff out there too, but there's the equivalent of 1 million. The total hash rate in petahashes is 0.11, and this is the percent of the total Bitcoin hash rate that your one ASIC has control over, right? And then the total power draw, that'll change if you change this from 1. And then kilowatts is 3.25, and then megawatts is 0.00325. And then all the money stuff is over here. So if we see what we've done now, we're on one ASIC, and it looks like per block we would make after electric cost of 8 cents. Now if we were in the US and we're doing 11 cents per kilowatt hour, right? Then it looks like we would earn 3 cents after power. So you got electric cost here, and then the rewards here, and then that's subtracted. So you would get 3 per block. So every hour it looks like 18 cents. Every day is $4.27. Every month is $130 roughly, and then every year is $15.35. So it would take quite a while to recoup, almost 2 years, and that's only if the reward, everything stays the same, which it won't, because as these devices are added to the network, more of these devices, then your amount of work that you're doing with your one ASIC goes down, right? Now this is real easy to, you know, look at from one ASIC, right? Just one, but imagine if you had thousands, right? So I did throw this out here. You can see over here, there's a little calculation for the hardware cost and then a total 1 year profit. Again, it's not going to be accurate because in 1 year, everything's going to change drastically, right? So let's do some other numbers here real quick. So let's say that you are a mining farm and you have 1,000, you ordered 1,000 S19 Pros. Okay, so at $7,491 BTC value, you would earn per block is about $31, 34 cents a minute. Every hour, $177. Every day, $4,266. So roughly $1.5 million a year, as long as everything stayed the same. Hash rate, difficulty, all that stuff, right? Which it won't. I have to keep saying that, because don't run out and buy an ASIC because of this little chart here, because that wouldn't be smart. Or it might not be smart, right? So you have to do all your own calculations here. But that's at 12.5 rewards per block. Now watch what happens whenever you change this to 6.25. And actually in this case it won't be so bad because we're using the S19 Pro. But we are using it at 11 cents per kilowatt hour. Let's change that to the China average, which is 0.08. So things get even better, right? You got 2.3 million basically off of your 1,000 Bitmain Pros, or your S19 Pros, and you have a cost of 2.6 million. So that first year, you're still going to be in the red if you include the value or how much it costs to buy those S19 Pros. Now, obviously, if you're buying them at scale like that, you would probably get a better deal on them. I don't know how they work. I would assume that if you bought 1,000 of them, you would get a little bit better than 2633. I don't know, but most likely that's the case. But anyway, I just threw this over there just to give a little bit of perspective so that you can see what's going on. And let's see here. So let's do the most important thing, which is the halving, right? Which is kind of what made me create this sheet in the first place, to lay out the numbers. So it's going from 12.5 to 6.25. Now watch all these numbers over here. So whenever it goes to 6.25, you're going to go from profiting, let me put it back up here so you can see, 12.5, 2.3 million down to, did I say 3.25? 6.25, right? Down to 65,000 in a year. Same, everything's the same except for the rewards per block. So if you were a farm with 1,000 S19 Pros, how would you handle this? What would you do in this scenario? It blows my mind, right? Because you're going to have to turn equipment off if the value doesn't double. If Bitcoin doesn't go to 15,000, and remember that's a pretty close number to that whole scenario with the previous halvings and how they have, the first one was 36, I believe. The second one was 36x. The second one was 16x, I think. And then if the third one does, actually no, that's not even close. Yeah, I'm way off. So in order for it to be the same profit as previously, you're going to have to double the value, at least double the value of Bitcoin, right? Yeah, I was getting off on a weird tangent there. Okay, so this 6.25 per block mining rewards at $7,500 USD value Bitcoin is not good for anybody, right? So what would happen? Well, they would turn off their miners, they would wait on the difficulty to come down, the network hash rate to decrease so that they could own more of the hash rate if they turn their equipment back on. This is that self-healing, that self-managing aspect of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, where it's awesome the way that this works, because this is going to force miners to shut their miners off, which in turn is going to decrease the difficulty and the network hash rate, which will entice other miners to turn their miners on. And then it's just constant, this battle. But in the meantime, the value, the USD value needs to go up in order for anything to be profitable, right? So it's a huge game, you know. So let's get back to the sheet real quick here. So let's say that if Bitcoin went to 15,000, then you're back to those previous profitability numbers. Now, something to note also is I am not including rent, mortgage, other electric costs, staff, you know, workers, insurance. I'm not including any of that stuff. This is literally just the hardware and how it relates to the value of Bitcoin, and that's it. So yeah, not including the operating expenses. So if you want me to plug something else in here, let me know what y'all think. I mean, we could do what is the S19. We could do the S19 real quick. So the S19 is 95 terahash, I think. And then it was, that's the S19 Pro. Go over here to the S19. Even though you can't buy them, it's 1964, and the power draw was 30. Wow, it's the same, 3250. It's the same as the Pro. Ugh, yeah, that's not good. I was really expecting that to be lower. Okay. At least a little bit lower. So it was 1964 and $32.50, and we're going to play with 1,000 of them. Oh wow, there's a giveaway at DCA. Okay, yeah, I'll finish up here in just a second. I just want to throw this other number in here real quick. So we're looking at S19, 95 terahash. So let's go back to $7,500 Bitcoin at 12.5. So you can see how they're pretty profitable right now. Okay, not bad. 1,000 of them would get you basically $5,000 a day, right? But after that halving, 6.25, boom! Look at that craziness, pure panic over here. Now, so that would mean that in order to compensate for that, if you go back to a $15,000 Bitcoin, then you're back to that $5,000 a day almost, right? So, all right, I've gone on long enough. I'm done talking. My throat's hurting and everything. So let's head over to DCA Adventures. If you aren't familiar with them, I'll throw this in the. You probably have already been throwing it in the chat here, but I'll throw it over here anyway. All right, so you got that. I guess they're doing a giveaway or something like that. If you thought that this was entertaining, helpful, informative, whatever, be sure to like the video, share the video. Also be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the little notification bell. I think you have to hit like all. There's personalized, and then all, so that you know whenever I'm going live. But basically, I'm pretty consistent. It's 9:30 Monday through Friday Eastern time. So calculate that out however you want. And yeah, we'll go from there. So I'm probably not going to be live tomorrow, Saturday or Sunday. Probably be Monday, but you never know. I might do something this weekend. We'll see. But yeah, do all that for me. I will see you guys next time. Stay savage, everybody.